here as representatives of the Procurement Executives Group. They are, of course, distinguished executives. Peter Jessup, you don't have to stand up. To the right is Group Vice President for Supply Chain Management with Amick Foster Wheeler. He leads a global team of 1,300 people with annual spend management of about $6.5 billion. He and his team execute complex projects for mining and metals, oil and gas, clean energy, and environmental and infrastructure industries over 12 market sectors. John Mika is Global Director of Procurement, Oil and Gas Group for CB&I. He has been with CB&I since March 2014 and oversees annual equipment and material commitment in excess of $2 billion annually. Mika has over 38 years of experience with large projects in the LNG, petrochemical, refining, power, floating production systems, civil infrastructure projects for water, wastewater, and transportation markets throughout the world. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Well, a couple of things. First of all, it's a real pleasure for me personally to attend the Breakbulk conference because I was a freight forwarder for 9 years and worked in Bechtel Shipping and Logistics Group for about 4 years. So I walk around here, see some of the stands in the exhibitors, and it brings back a lot of memories. I apologise for the fact the wig is, my hair's a little different to the photograph, you know. Yeah, thank you. So before we begin, I think the most important thing to recognise is that, as Jan has emphasised, John and I are representing a group called the Procurement Executives Group. We're going to present and talk about that. We'll talk about what we see as some market indices, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we see is in the marketplace. Frankly, I think it's fair for us to say as the Procurement Executives Group that there is unlikely to be anything, excuse me, that we talk about that is not already out there in the marketplace. So don't expect some brilliant revelations from us, okay? So, how do we make this go? Stephen? I don't know. Nice. A piece of gizmo is needed. The other thing, in case you haven't noticed, I've got a very strange accent. I call Mr. Amos, my former boss. I call myself a Brexan, that's a British Texan, okay? So I do know how to go y'all, but the rest of how Houstonians, Texans speak is beyond my capability. Okay, so we're going to present, as we say, on what we see is capital projects outlook. Okay, naturally, as with all presentations, there is the standard formal disclaimer. I don't propose to sit and read it. You can read it at your leisure, okay? So our discussion topics is about the Procurement Executive Group, or PEG, Global Economic Environment, IHS, which is IHS Global Insight, and PEG, we together produce an Engineering and Construction Cost Index, which is published every month. And market sector outlooks, and then questions and answers. But if people feel maybe as we go through this they wish to ask a question, that would also be okay. So the Procurement Executives Group has been around for a long time, 21 years, founded in 1994. There were originally 7 member companies. There are now 20, and those 20 companies are all the major EPC, EPCM contractors that one would expect to see. We have a vision, which is a leading supply chain forum for elevating EPC industry performance. We work together very closely to achieve that. And as you can see, we have a mission, which is basically to contribute to the integrated supply chain to drive innovation and capital efficiency related to major project execution. We meet twice a year, normally in the spring and the autumn, or if I'm speaking Texan, that would be the fall. Under strict antitrust compliance rules. So we basically comply fully with that requirement. And as I said earlier, our members are all EPC, EPCM, That's engineering, procurement, construction, engineering, procurement, construction, management, industry companies with recognised supply chain organisations. And as you can see, there's a website there. You feel free to visit that website. You can learn much more about us, what we do, who the members are, etc. Okay, so we basically, as I said earlier, we have our vision, we have antitrust compliance, and we have a mission. And here we have our values. So they speak obviously to, we have a very strong focus on ethics and integrity, which is what you would expect from organisations like ours. Very big focus on health and safety. Basically, all our members do, and we do as a group, focus on these things. Environment, which is increasingly important to focus on. Quality, we have recently just formed a team to look at certain issues we see from the industry perspective regarding quality issues that we all have to deal with from time to time. We value diversity and sustainability and social responsibility. We collaborate, and we have leadership and procurement excellence as one of our values. Okay. What did I press that was wrong? This was the movies in the UK that now say there's going to be a short intermission. So you can go outside and get your ice cream. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so this is information that basically through our association with IHS Global Insight is something that's out in the marketplace. It's information they provided for us to be able to share with you. So their headline is a gradual acceleration in global economy. World GDP, they believe, will pick up from about 2.6 to 3.1, with the US being a major part of that, particularly with the spending and home building. There will be recoveries in Europe and Japan, and will gain momentum, aided by the monetary stimulus packages that are going on, particularly in Europe and the UK. Currency depreciation, obviously a pent-up demand is forecast as building, which will therefore cause the economy to recover somewhat better. China's growth will be restrained by imbalances in credit, housing and industrial markets, and China growth is obviously the biggest risk, as we all know. I mean, the recent headlines have been, is it 7% GDP or is it really 5%? Nobody's quite sure, it would appear. Several emerging markets are in recession, so these were really the BRIC countries predominantly are now in recession, so that affects what's going on in the global economy. And growth paths in emerging markets will depend on structural reforms and productivity being raised and capital being allocated more efficiently. Oh, you've got it. I think I'm going to do it.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Good, thank you. I'm going to stand up if you don't mind. A little nervous energy always when I'm presenting, but also have some great energy this morning in that waking up to with my morning coffee and was reading one of my favorite New York Times headlines this morning. Yanks skid into the winter. So I think a good round of applause for the Houston Astros. Big game last night, and a lot of fun, and us Texans, we all wish them well into the next round of the playoffs, so that was exciting. I also, on behalf of the PEG, wanted to thank you all, thank Breakbulk for inviting us back. We've sponsored or given the keynote a number of times over the years, and so it's great to be back and appreciate that. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of time and give you an overview on something called the Engineering and Construction Cost Index. And so just as a starting point with a show of hands, how many people here are aware of this index or have seen it? So that's good. I got a receptive crowd here that I can explain to. A very important index for the EPC industry. And this is a partnership effort on a focused index that mirrors the inputs into the EPC business. It is a collaboration that we do with IHS Global Insights. It's an effort that we started about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, to develop a representative index that was done in a way that would support our antitrust rules with PEG, so that there was no suspicion on collaboration around pricing or delivery information, specific supplier information, things like that. We needed to come up with a way to do that. That was provided by IHS, who collects the survey data, and which is not shared individually with any of the companies. And so that was a key part in launching this, and it took us a couple of years to work through all those issues. We also wanted to validate the data to make sure that it was truly representative of the information that we were providing, that it was statistically relevant, if you will, and was a responsible indication and predictor of what was happening in the market. It's a diffusion index, and if you're familiar with these kinds of things, it's very similar to like the Institute for Supply Management, Supply Managers Index. If the number is above 50, it means that prices are rising. The higher the number above 50, the faster prices are rising. If the number is below 50, prices are receding, and the lower it is below 50, the faster they're receding. So it is again, what they classify as a diffusion index. The other thing that I can tell you is it's based on representative sample for the EPC business. We have a market basket of material and equipment. Also included in there is freight costs, ocean freight costs, and executives from the member group companies respond on a monthly basis to a simple survey on what direction these market baskets are going. The information is collected by IHS, who then translate the results and produce and publish the actual index. And I'm going to show you here some of the charts in a few minutes, and show you a little bit on what this means and translate maybe a little bit of it for you from our perspective also. Listed down below there is the website connection into IHS, and if you take that down, you can plug into that yourself. You do a simple registration, and it will release all the public data to you that's given, and you can pull these down yourself on a monthly basis. So with that, this is the September, this was just released last week, and this is what we call the headline index. And this is a collection of subcontract construction labor along with equipment and materials. And you see the 50 dark line there, which again, if you're above that line, pricing is increasing, and the higher it is, the faster it's increasing. If you're below that line, pricing is receding, and the deeper it is below that line, the faster it's receding. If you look at the solid blue line, That is based on a